Feelings are dumb. And so I told Easton I didn't want to be friends anymore. I cast my eyes downward to the speckled carpet standard in every office. Wow. Nilo sat across from me, nodding in approval. That sounds like a big step. I squinted in recollection before falling back against the couch cushion. I guess so. In truth, I didn't know how I felt. Pushing Easton away felt good, but I had lost someone I loved. How have you been reacting? Nilo asked. I was kind of depressed all week. School's been hard. I can imagine, Nilo said. He had such a ridiculously sympathetic way of speaking. You said you've been depressed. Tell me about your depression. I guess I've just been down, you know? Nilo nodded. I puffed out my lips. But things have still been decent, I guess. Nilo hesitated, mouth ajar. Last time we met, you talked about experiencing suicidal thoughts. Have those continued? I shrugged. I know suicide isn't necessarily a good option. Sometimes it's just satisfying to think about and consider how I would theoretically do it. Nilo nodded, as if he totally understood. And I believed him. He understood what it was like to wish you could die and not know why or how to stop the feelings. To fear one day you would succumb to the nagging desire telling you to end your own life. When this happens, when you think about suicide, do you have someone you feel like you can talk with? I shook my head. I had talked to Noah yesterday, but I had no desire to speak with him consistently about this. Maybe a support group can be something we can focus on before our next session. Would you be willing to make someone a confidant you can speak with? I gave a half shrug, half nod. Sure. Nilo nodded, seeming appeased. Good. So last week we talked about Easton and how your relationship dynamic was affecting you. This week your relationship is slightly different with Easton, but I suspect there's still progress to be made. I nodded, happy Nilo had guided the conversation back to Easton. He was all I wanted to talk about. What about Easton caused you to have such a deep emotional connection with him? What was it about Easton? His hair? Eyes? Maybe even smile? Perhaps it was his personality. He was undoubtedly an exceptional person, but none of his attributes should have caused me to obsess over him. I don't know. I feel terrible about the situation. Like, I wish I could talk to him and tell him it's not his fault. It's just me. Nilo's eyebrows raised in surprise. I liked Easton, and it sucks that he doesn't want to date. But I guess it was a good learning experience, or whatever. Nilo grinned, placing hands together on his lips. You're tricky. Taken aback, I clenched my teeth. I'm sorry. I felt as though I had been honest with him. No, it's okay, Nilo said, backpedaling. I wonder if your words contradict the emotion you're feeling. When you talk about how you're feeling, you tend to skip over the emotions of it and focus on a particular aspect of why the situation isn't so bad. Like when you talk about the past week, you say all these negative events, and then you say, oh, but it's not so bad because of this, and this reason. I want you to learn to focus on the emotions of your situation and express how you feel. I squirmed under his exposing gaze. Do you understand? I had indeed skirted his question. Yeah, I do. He waited for me to talk. I guess I'm kind of numb because of what happened, I said. Nilo nodded, indicating I was going in the right direction with this thought. I'm also frustrated because of how I reacted. I've dropped 3 of my classes this semester and haven't had much motivation to do, anything. I'm a decent student, but I just don't care. I feel like that should make me angry, but I don't have enough energy to be angry. Nilo's eyebrows rose. You must have really liked Easton, he said. This seems to have been on your mind a lot. I did, I said confidently. I liked him a lot, and I think my reaction to that is what frustrates me most. This sounds stupid, but I feel like a schoolgirl moping over her first crush. It feels so immature. Nilo laughed, raising his hands into the air triumphantly. Yes, he said. I'm so glad you made that analogy. What an awesome analogy. Was Easton your first crush then? I shrugged. First crush I acknowledged. Fair enough. But you bring up a good point, because there's a reason teenage girls feel the way they do. And I assume teenage boys, if they would talk, feel the same way. But they don't talk. But with teenage girls, there's a lot going on in their lives. Relationships are hard to deal with on the outset, which is why a high school can be so difficult. The struggle in being gay is that we don't often experience these emotions until later in life, you know? Because of societal pressures and other factors, we rarely get to feel what it's like to open up to someone until later in high school or college or even beyond, Nilo said. I'm coming to realize that. So obviously, Easton has had a big influence on your life, Nilo said. I'm curious to know, what about the situation with Easton made you feel so comfortable with him? I exhaled heavily, recounting in my mind the first time I met Easton in the library at USGA. The way he had come up to talk to me and make me feel welcome. His smile and the kind way he looked at me. Like he knew everything I was going through. He was just always there. I felt my bottom lip tremble. This year has been a huge transition in my life. He was the first person to reach out to me at USGA. And he cared enough to talk to me and be there for me. He made me feel welcome, like things were going to be okay. I was thankful he would do that for me. And I'll never get the chance to tell him how thankful I am for him. Talking about why I liked Easton stirred an emotional response in my gut, which forced me to stop talking. I sat on the edge of tears as Nilo considered me. It sounds like you still care a lot about him, despite what happened. Unable to do or say anything else, I nodded. Yeah. I cleared my throat, forcing the emotions away. I just want you to know, Johnny, the emotions you're feeling are very normal and valid. The emotions you just described would be the same in a heterosexual situation or a homosexual one. Easton became a support system for you in many ways, being the person to help you become comfortable with your sexuality. To have him reject you twice like he did, once in a dating scenario and then in friendship, must have been very jarring. You had a support system. You had trust. To have everything kicked out from under you would, of course, be a devastating experience. Yeah. The conversation died. An analog clock ticked seconds away on the wall. The thought of talking about Claire nagged at the back of my mind. Now seemed like a good chance to steer the conversation in that direction, but my tongue wouldn't say it. Do you know why you responded this way to Easton? Nilo asked. Not really. Nilo watched me like a rock climber planning their route. Is it just Easton that made you feel suicidal? Are there any other situations that bring those feelings out in you? Yeah, I guess. What connects them, do you think? What did connect all my suicidal thoughts? They began when realizing I was gay. Or was it my dad leaving? The timelines on that front were too close for me to remember exactly what happened. Those first suicidal thoughts happened periodically throughout junior high and high school. The thoughts largely disappeared after high school. I didn't deal with them very strongly again until this year. They started again with Claire, and got worse over time. What I managed to relay to Nilo was much simpler than my inner dialogue. I guess it's a lot of factors outside myself. Things, situations, people I don't want to deal with. External forces that conflict with and restrict what I want to do or be. So it's not Easton specifically? Nilo asked. He was there and involved. I squirmed in my seat. But he wasn't the reason. Interesting, Nilo said in an academic voice. Why do your thoughts jump to suicide in situations you don't want to deal with? You've lived a full life, handled your share of problems. Why do some problems make you suicidal? Why indeed? I had never thought about this. Real life wasn't like creating a book character with compelling motivations and personality types. Readers don't actually want real life because it's messy. They want good characters, sure, but even the most loved characters across literature are distilled people, a focused ideology or set of preferences that inform coherent actions. If a real person were a book character, they'd be all over the place and make no sense. I mean, Exhibit A right here. And maybe that ambiguity was my problem. Life was supposed to be simple. I was born with the answers, the truth in Christ's only church. But the hardest times in my life weren't simple or brimming with objective truths. I guess it's because my problems are sudden and big and scary, and I don't know how to solve them. It's too much to process, but my mind is searching for a solution, and I need a solution. So when there's no obvious fix, my thoughts jump to the solution always in the back of my mind. Nyla's mouth compressed. That sounds like a lot of weight to be carrying around. I was suicidal a lot as a kid. My problems back then were big and scary, but I eventually learned how to handle them, I guess. I learned to deal with the ambiguity of being a gay Mormon and having a broken family. I felt this kind of festering dread, but I dealt with it. I fell silent, trying to process my words. I had never said anything like this or examined myself so honestly, and my words came in slow gusts. Certain situations would make me briefly think about suicide, but if I just stepped through the problem, I saw that suicide wasn't the answer. And then this thing with Easton came along, and I just wasn't equipped to handle it. These were new problems with solutions so far beyond me that suicide was the only solution because I just didn't know how to make the anxiety stop. I'm sorry you've had to go through that on your own. Nyla was looking at me with sympathy. Never before had I felt like someone actually saw me when looking at me. My lower lip began to tremble, and my sinuses liquefied. I don't know how to fix it. My voice cut off, and I couldn't speak for several seconds. I just feel so broken. I can see that you feel that way, Nyla said, watching me. But the realizations you've had today show me that you aren't broken. You just haven't had anyone to help you make sense of the world around you. I guess so. This is huge, Johnny. You've identified on your own that when complex problems appear to threaten your future happiness and stability, your mind stalls in trying to find a solution, and fills the space with thoughts of suicide. You have something to work with now. You can be aware of when it happens. I gave a weak smile. I was weary of embracing any idea as the ultimate solution to any problem at this point in my life, but something felt safer about inspecting my inner workings to mitigate the problems specific to me. Yeah, I think I agree. Nyla glanced at the clock. Before we end, I wanted to bring one more thing up. I met Nyla's eyes. I remember what you said about your last counselor, and how you didn't like how he tried to shove you off onto group therapy. But how would you feel about doing group therapy alongside our sessions here? Group therapy can be beneficial by helping you talk about these types of things outside of a setting like this. I thought for a moment. I guess I would be open to going. Nyla nodded. I'll set you up with a new group starting next week. What time works for you? I walked home to my apartment at Heritage Halls, slipping through the door and down the hall without talking to my roommates in the kitchen. Closing the door behind myself, I opened my garment drawer and plunged my hand past my garments to the bottom. My fingers brushed against my disciplinary council letters before landing on the keychain containing my knife and consecrated oil vial. I lifted it from the drawer, examining both in my hand before turning them over. For some reason, both objects felt important. I would never use the oil again. Being a worthy priesthood holder would forever be out of reach. Then there was the knife. It was dull, unable to cut, so getting rid of it was more of a symbolic gesture than anything. But harboring a suicide plan of any caliber was no longer something I would do. If a difficult situation arose, I could choose to get rid of it now before I ever wanted to use it again. I left my apartment, walking down to the Heritage Hall's dumpsters. With a sentimental-fueled moment of hesitation, I tossed the knife and oil vial into the dumpster. A loud clank reverberated throughout the empty metal box. I paused, trying to discern how I felt. The act alone solved none of my problems, but the motivation behind the act might just be the beginning of a solution. There would be no decisive moment when I would no longer feel the desire to commit suicide, only a continuing effort to prevent my future self from acting out a previously considered plan. I returned to my apartment, venturing into my kitchen to greet my roommates. Will and Wyatt looked up at me with expectant expressions on their faces. "We're about to have a LAN party, if you want to join," Wyatt said. I laughed at the spontaneity of the idea. "Sure, I'll get my computer."